Recently, I've come to the revelation that a majority of people who play DEEPWOKEN today haven't even experienced actual old DEEPWOKEN. And this happened when I was talking in DEEPWOKEN general with someone about what release week was like and my favorite parts about it. And then someone random chimed in, get it, he chimed in about old DEEPWOKEN. And he was talking about Verse 2 release. Verse 2 release is not old DEEPWOKEN. The game is 4 years old, that happened halfway through its current lifespan. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about old DEEPWOKEN and the best parts about it. Along with that, I'm very sorry, but I didn't realize Thanksgiving was tomorrow on a Thursday, and I've got a lot of stuff to prepare for, so I'm actually delaying the DEEPWOKEN drip review and contest until Monday, December 1st at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I will be live at twitch.tv/Reaconteur then. Come in and watch. And I'm not live today or Friday for the holidays, you know how it is. Now, make sure to subscribe, and let's get straight into it. Alright, so first of all, if you've actually been playing DEEPWOKEN within the first 3 months of release, please leave a comment down below, because I'm actually curious of this, and I want to see like what percentage of the people watching these videos have actually been playing the game for that long, because the more I ask people about how long they've been playing, the more I realize that most of you guys are new gens, and you're scum. No, I'm joking. Now, with that being said, the first thing I loved about old DEEPWOKEN, which honestly wasn't a good thing, it was just really entertaining, but it was just all the funny bullshit. People complained today about losing half a bar of health per hit. People were saying, oh my god, the wretched mob blades are so broken because they guard break you and take half your health. Dude, back in old DEEPWOKEN, you could just get one shot. Not even one comboed, one shot. And keep in mind, builds back then had upwards of 1,300 health. So there's a couple of fun ways that you could get one shot. First of all, any mantra with a multiplying spark at one point, in fact just sparks and modifications to mantras in general, didn't really have caps or limits or like balancing things, so other than having like massive mantras, which I'm sure you guys even see massive mantras today, you could have like an Ash Slam that would be the size of the entire original Chime of Conflict arena. That's not even a joke, it was actually insane. But another thing you could do was, so any mantra with a multiplying spark at one point didn't have different damage values for projectiles or hitboxes, so a few multiplying sparks on something like a Gale Wind Gun would just do 8 times the damage point blank, because every projectile would do the damage of one Wind Gun, which was already doing like 100 damage, because keep in mind everyone had over 1,000 health at this point. Then there was Wind Up and Corrupted Wind Up, which generally trash bell today, would allow you to make enough stacks to do over 1,000 damage easily by just like M1ing someone, and oh, don't even try and block that, because you'll take more damage for blocking it easily. And also, back when the Legion caught a crit was unblockable, if you used that crit and then move stacked it with the Jar of Souls Bell, they'd eat the entire beam, and it could do well over 1,000 damage as well, especially if you had souls in that. Then there was the Grand Javelin, which Grand Javelin's a good mantra today, but if you used it on anyone who was fishing, if you just use Grand Javelin on someone who's reeling in a fish, they just instantly die and get flung for like 4 months until it was finally fixed. And other than one-shotting people, there was just a lot of more fun things and creative things that you can do. Most of you know the Summon Cauldron mantra is basically only used for making potions, which is kinda useless because Salt Chemist exists. But people used to use Summon Cauldron to combo people with. You would use like a crit or something, and then you'd move stack it with the Summon Cauldron, and it would be like hitting them into a wall with Bulldozer. And this was cool and creative, and the devs were like, let's just remove it from the game. You can't use it in combat anymore. And I think there was definitely better ways to go about this than just removing it from combat, because I think it was still one of the coolest things the DEEPWOKEN community managed to do with something like a utility mantra. But you know, DEEPWOKEN devs don't like fun. But yeah, other than like one-shotting people and jank combos and stuff, the game had a lot of bullshit that was really funny, and even though yeah, most of it wasn't good, watching clips of people getting flung by ironclads was like the funniest thing ever back then. So I honestly kinda miss it at least a little bit. Now onto the actual good parts of old DEEPWOKEN rather than the just entertaining ones that I like a little bit too much. First of all, I like the rarity of items back then. Things were rare, but they weren't nearly as bad as other Roblox games with the rates and having like 0.000325% chance for this one legendary drop that it's gonna need 3 more legendary drops to be used, you know? So yeah, for enchants and legendary weapons, you'd grind a boss a few times, but it wasn't nearly that bad. And today, nothing has rarity in game, which is just kinda lame. Legendary weapons don't feel like legendary weapons. They feel just kinda like normal weapons. Enchants feel like just another cosmetic, and it just doesn't matter much anymore, which honestly I hate. Because back then, people used so many weapons and different attunement combos, and I get that metas exist and always have, but I feel like the disparity between the best and the worst weapons was lesser back then, only because people were using more weapons back then, because actually the disparity was probably larger, but that's not including endgame weapons, that's talking about every weapon in the game, and yeah, obviously the Crypt Blade's gonna be way better than the default sword. But like, tell me the last time you saw a mainly Gale or mainly Shadow build not using a legendary weapon. Every Shadow user runs Crypt Blade, every Gale user is running either Wraithclaw or the Curved Blade, and I mean, mean, I guess some Shadow users run the Hero's Blade if they want to have like weird mage builds, but most people are just using the Crypt Blade if they're running mainly Shadow. And the problem is, the devs have rebalanced the weapons in a way where they can't buff other weapons that aren't legendary, because then they'd be too versatile and dominate the meta. Because yeah, you can buff a legendary weapon, or you can make a strong legendary weapon, and now it controls over one attunement entirely. Think of the Wraithclaw and the Curved Blade of Winds. Those things dominate Gale, but at least there's two weapons there, and it doesn't affect the other attunements. So if they make another weapon and they make it stronger than the legendary weapons, then we've got the problem of now legendary weapons aren't good enough, so a random weapon is dominating everything versus, you know, 5 weapons being the default for every given attunement, which is just kind of lame. So the devs kind of would just have to rework a lot of stuff to actually make more viable non-legendary weapons without just making the legendary weapons useless. Which, you know, there's a lot of way to do that, like buffing the legendary weapons and then just giving them harsher requirements to make them less versatile and more specialized, but, you know, devs just, I don't know, man. But yeah, legendary weapons have become the norm for a lot of builds and attunements, and along with that, speaking of attunements, some of them are just outright better. I'm sure we all know how good Iron Sing is in comparison to Thundercall, and the problem isn't necessarily that the players are lame and all cling to metas, which is a problem because of Chime of Conflict, that Chime of Conflict specifically has started, but it's the fact that the developers aren't really trying to make things balance too well. Why is Thundercall so ass? Like, every attunement has its gimmick, and Thundercall's original gimmick was the stuns, but then they nerfed Hyper Armor, and the stuns, which bypass Hyper Armor, became less versatile and less usable, so now Thundercall's only real gimmick is that it does good damage, but like, the damage isn't worth using over other attunements which deal marginally less damage and have much better talents or gimmicks like Iron Sing and Jailer and all that. It's just kind of lame. And back on the topic of rarity, why is everything so common now? I get it was for making things more fair for newer players, but there's no real endgame goals or things to grind for other than power level, because in the pursuit of power 20, you'll basically achieve everything else, leaving the game with no real endgame content unless you want to grind for an ideal armor kit, in which case it feels less rewarding than something actually rare would have been back like in old DEEPWOKEN, like an enchant or a legendary weapon. And in this case, it's even harder to get ideal armor kits while min-maxing than it would have been to get enchants and legendary weapons, just for it to feel less rewarding, because the 20 health difference your ideal HP kit had in comparison to one you randomly got while progressing isn't really that important. The rarity of items back then gave them value, and yeah, they nerfed the enchants heavily back when like Curse of Bloodthirsty did 300% damage, but also took 10% of your health per miss swing. So yeah, I guess making them more common is fine, but it would have been cool if enchants were special, and seeing someone with one meant they either got divinely chosen by the luck gods, or they played the game enough to be decently experienced. And the only time the devs tried to experiment with luck again, they did it in the absolute worst way possible with the whole Witherblade release stuff. That was just poorly executed because it was in one loot pool, which only benefited one part of the community, which was the people who would use the Witherblade. Like, the reason why enchants were good being rare is because you could get them from any loot pool, and they would always benefit you, so there was always somewhere or some way to grind for them. The Witherblade was kind of an extreme case where it was in one loot pool, extremely rare, rarer than enchants back then, or on par, like 0.1% chance, and then you had to go through the whole recipe thing just for a weapon that was situational. We shouldn't be doing that for weapons. We should be doing stuff like that for things that are unique and universally beneficial, like enchants and stuff like that. But the devs didn't do that with enchants, because enchants are now super common and you can just get any enchant you want. Another thing I loved about old DEEPWOKEN was the fact that the Chime of Conflict didn't exist. Other than Chime being extremely boring and too structured to ever be fun, while simultaneously limiting you by disabling mechanics like bells, which are game mechanics for a reason, and you guys make a mode that just disables something as important as bells? Are we serious? Bells are a huge part of progression, right? But regardless, before Chime of Conflict existed, the world felt more full and the community felt more alive and close. In release week, it didn't matter what island you went to, there were always people in the overworld passing you, going on to do their own thing, but it felt like a much closer community than it feels like today. And along with that, the players in the overworld were actually decent back then. The reason why I hate Chime is because it kind of just siphons all the interesting fights and fun from the overworld. The overworld has various terrains, monsters, and environments that can change how your fights end up. Along with that and the fact that it isn't locked to 1v1s or structured team fights, the overworld has a lot of variability in the fights that happen, and I think that's fun. But the problem is, a majority of the people in the overworld aren't very good at the game anymore, because everyone who's half decent is now in Chime of Conflict or war servers, so the average 800 elo player in Chime is better than the average overworld dweller who isn't in war servers. And I don't play war servers because I don't have an active guild and I don't play enough to make it worth my time, but even if I did, it's not spontaneous enough for me. But along with that, like, I want to be able to go into Etris, you go to the Etris docks and get attacked by someone who's max level with an enchant and stuff like that, right? But it's basically impossible to find an actual decent fight in the overworld now, and Chime is what I blame for that. It's easier to win a 3v1 in the overworld than it is to win a 1v1 in Chime, and that's not even a joke. The last time I was playing seriously, that is exactly what happened. I won a 3v1 in the overworld, and it's probably in an old clip from a video like 2 years ago, and it's just not as fun anymore, because even that 3v1 was more fun than it would have been like a 1v1 in Chime, but even then it really wasn't a challenge because those guys were terrible because they're just the average overworld players now. Then there's the exploration aspect. I know this is kind of unavoidable, but obviously like the game was more fun when it was new and nobody knew what to do or how to get stuff. Now this isn't necessarily something that can be recreated without a major addition like Layer 3 or the soon to drop Vow of Iron, which I pray is going to be good, but I think it's going to be pretty good. I have high hopes for it. But DEEPWOKEN's first week of release genuinely was a magical experience. If you played Rogue Lineage back when it was new and before Update Ultimate, which I also did, then you experienced something very similar back then. The games just both had a veil of mystery which made them enchanting at the time. But the big difference between Rogue Lineage and DEEPWOKEN in this aspect is just that Rogue Lineage had more hidden stuff, and I think the combat was more captivating. I still think Rogue Lineage is a more fun game than DEEPWOKEN, outside of the progression and macros. But that's not a topic for this video. So I will go ahead and say though, I think all the big ass mantra VFX are super annoying. I liked Rogue Lineage because like the VFX for stuff were very minimal and didn't blind me every time I saw a mantra. Like, why is Rising Flame so fucking big? Like, that mantra has no reason to have that much VFX on it. Or what is it, Flaming Scourge? Fuck that thing too. And then there's the old instance server that they had where every island was in one server. By the way, Vow of Iron, if you guys didn't know, won't be separated into 2 luminants, which is cool. But honestly, I hate the Western luminant changes. And I understand that it was done for optimization and lag because it's easier to split the game into 2 maps than optimizing it better. But the devs could have optimized it better. And the split up maps is just an annoyance. It's so annoying when I have to go between servers for something that should technically be in the same space. And it causes a lot of annoying issues with server hopping, teleporting, getting friends in for help with stuff. And then like whenever you take portals in from like Hive that go to Etris, you could just end up in a shitty server and have to relog anyway. I understand actual luminants being in separate servers, like when they eventually add the central luminant in, but the eastern luminant isn't even a real luminant. It was literally just kind of retconned in as an explanation for why the devs had to split the map for optimization purposes. Now there's a lot of more niche things I could talk about, like how DEEPWOKEN used to have racism and stuff like that, which made the world feel more lively. Okay, wait, out of context, that sounds kind of bad that I want racism in DEEPWOKEN, but I just wanted more personality in the NPCs, is what I was trying to say. But technically, and for that example specifically, that never even made it into the game and was removed after only existing conceptually or during testing. Because yes, the Etrians were supposed to be racist. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. I've got a song cover dropping soon, so buy a YouTube membership to hear my monthly song covers. And speaking of, shoutouts to YouTube members of Tier 2 or higher, so if you want a shout out, then buy a YouTube membership of Tier 2 or higher. Green, Brick, Pickle, High Card, Philip, Flying Noodle 559, Delusional Mo, who changed his name from Simply Mo, Elstern, Fun Guns, Carlia the Witch, V. Corey, Axelor, and Drizzy Drake Fan. I love you all. Hope you have an amazing day. Check me out on Twitch, of course, and the live channel where I'm going to go back to uploading weekly. Have an amazing day as usual, and goodbye.